It was actually, I guess it was my logical software engineer mind that was saying, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't logically make sense. What are you doing? And I questioned it in the reverse. And in that question, I just said, oh, this really doesn't make sense. This is not. And so I said, I'm leaving. And I really literally started packing my bags and was ready to leave. And I couldn't put my foot out that door. And that's when I said, oh, then this must really be a call. So it became very logically clear that this was my vocation, yeah.
Welcome back to My Perfect Path, the podcast where we talk to people with unique careers to uncover the lessons that shape their journeys. I'm your host, Daniel Koo, and today's episode is called My Focolare Path. The word focolare comes from Italian, meaning hearth or family, and it's the name of a global movement dedicated to building unity and fostering dialogue across communities, cultures, and professions. It's also been a central influence in the life of today's guest, Loretta Rauschuber. Loretta is an accountant and a leader in the Economy of Communion, a global initiative inspired by the principles of Focolare that focuses on aligning business with social impact. Her story is remarkable, from growing up in a small Texas town to having a 17-year software engineering career in Rome, and now balancing her work with a deep commitment to community and service. In this episode, Loretta shares how she made bold decisions to follow her passions, navigate big career shifts, and find meaning and happiness in her life. If you've ever wondered how to take risks, embrace change, or align your career with your values, Loretta's story will inspire you. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Welcome to My Perfect Path. I'm thrilled to have you here. Just to kick us off, what is your current role and what is kind of like the current state of your career?
Right now, my day job, I'm working as an accountant for an elementary school in Pacific Palisades, California. And one thing that I'm very passionate about is my work with an organization called the Economy of Communion. It's entrepreneur-based, but it's actually for everyone. We all in somehow are associated with business. So it's how business can have a very close relationship with those who are vulnerable. And I just love that. And then also, one thing that I picked up during the pandemic was illustrating art. Yeah, illustrating books. So yeah, it's something I really enjoy.
So you recently published something, is that right?
Yeah, I did. I was inspired by the story of a young girl in Italy. She was 19 years old when she died of bone cancer. And the way she lived her illness, at the time of her death, it went viral on the internet. And it was very attractive. And I said, I want to illustrate her life. And there were so many very warm, sincere moments that were very meaningful in her life that there were no photos for. So I chose those and I said, I want to illustrate that. I want to illustrate so people can see what that moment looked like. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. Tell us more about the Economy of Communion and tell us about the scale of that organization and how it operates. Like what kind of businesses do you connect with?
Yeah, and a lot of them were interested in working with startups because the Economy of Communion, we say it starts with a gift. Like there's a gift or a mechanism of giving in business. That's one thing that we embrace. Like what is the gift going to be? And so we also practice it as an organization, and we feel like with startups, there's so much we can help them with, like getting their branding done, their logos, helping them get into the market. So we work a lot with startups, but also the vast majority are medium and small entrepreneurs. And there again, it's people that are looking for meaning. They're looking for something beyond even social entrepreneurship. And they're looking for those relationships. And so it's very people-oriented. Every decision you make, it's the person's at the center of the decision. And it seems to be that missing piece, like that relationship. It's not just making a lot of money and then giving away some of it to the poor. Well, do you know that person? Are they, do they come to your house? Are they your friend? One entrepreneur, he only hires homeless men. That's his giving, his mechanism of giving. And the very first homeless man that he hired after 15 years of business did hospice on his living room couch. Like this was his friend. This was his close friend. And so entering into that messiness, and I think that's something that's very attractive. Like, are we willing to be there by the person in that time of vulnerability? And yeah, so it's something that is very key to the economy of communion and what we practice. Yeah.
So you're kind of in charge of the entire organization, is that right?
You could say that, yeah. I'm the president of the organization currently in the United States and Canada, and we are basically all over the world. So in Asia, in Africa, it's big in Africa, and South America, big in South America. And we're all connected too. It's like one family. It really is a sense of family. And there again, it's because it's all about relationships. So even relationships among us, and everything we decide, everything we do, it's like, when I make that decision, am I basing it off of the people that are around me? Even like my competitor is my friend. It's not, and so, yeah, it's about.
How big is the organization right now?
Like worldwide, I would say maybe 800 to 900 businesses that work, that actually embrace all the practices and, the principles of the economy of communion, about 800 maybe.
Wow.
It's hard to count because it's so fluctual, and also with the pandemic, things shifted so much. So we're still trying to catch up with numbers, but yeah.
How do you manage that with the day job that you have?
I think it's driven by passion. Yeah, like passion, you find time. You find time to do what you really love, yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what kind of upbringing you had?
I grew up in a very small town, a farm community in central Texas, where agriculture, we raised cotton and corn, basically. Both of my grandparents were farmers. They had big farms. So we grew up, with fruit and vegetables and farms and so in a very small town. So I never, ever thought I was going to leave my hometown. You grow up there, you get married there, and you already know where you're going to be buried. And so I just, that's small town mentality also. So that's kind of what I thought my life was going to be.
Yeah, I think through this episode, we're going to reveal how you kind of went to Europe, came back to the United States. It's really incredible how you were able to kind of break out of that mentality of staying at your hometown and go as far as, Europe to have a software engineering career, and coming back, going through all these transitions to become who you are right now. So I'm really excited to kind of dig into that. So right now you're an accountant at a elementary school. How did you kind of get there? What was the stage right before that?
So right before my career as an accountant, it was a career shift, you could say. Most of my adult professional life, I did software engineering. I was a software engineer at USC, and before that, in Rome I worked 17 years for an international headquarters as a software engineer, and kind of like laid a foundation, put together the whole foundation for an IT shop, you would say. Yeah.
Did you have any sort of experience with accounting before? Was there any education or training?
Yeah, so I have a degree in accounting and a degree in computer science. And so that's where a lot of the software that I wrote was often financial software, accounting software, because I had that business background also, yeah.
How did you decide to transition into becoming an accountant? I feel like if you've already been in software so long, it would be very difficult to even imagine doing a career shift.
Actually, I loved software engineering. You're also a software engineer.
Yes.
And I think you might identify with this, especially like the very first years in my 20s. You create something from nothing. You're creating something from nothing. And it's very powerful. Also, it's exponential because you're dealing with technology. And so it creates like this passion and this drive. And if you're not careful, you can get carried away with it. And I think that's a little bit of what I loved about software. I think one thing that a common denominator in everything, in the different careers I've had, I was always very attracted to finding a way to help the person next to me. Like, for example, at USC, I always did the financial. So in the payroll department, they were struggling with something. I said, let me help you figure out, and let me help you do this quicker and better and with less effort, and let's solve the problem. Let's not, also in software engineering, you have to be careful. If you're good at it, you reduce the workload. And if you can't figure that out, you can actually create more work for people with your software. And so you have to know that. And I think I was driven by, I want to help them with their needs. Yeah.
Let's talk about, where you started and kind of the education background that you had. So you mentioned that you have the 2 degrees. Where was that and when was that?
So they're both associate degrees at a simple, small community college in Waco, Texas.
Were those like 2-year?
They were 2-year programs. And I don't think I had a lot of self-esteem. I thought that's all I can do. And all my siblings went to universities and I didn't. And then little by little, I started discovering my potential. And one thing that became very meaningful in that whole discovery was it's not so much the degree and the title that I had, but how I was able to fully use it to its full potential and go beyond even people perhaps that studied a lot more and were not able to hone so much out of it. I felt like I really used it to the fullest. Yeah.
Did you have this kind of thought when you were getting that degree, or was this kind of later?
No, actually, I was dating the person I felt I was going to live the rest of my life with. And I was in love. And my first degree, I was very focused on getting it. But the second degree I was basically just waiting for him to finish school. So I said, well, I'm at it. I'll get another degree. So the whole concept, now looking back on it, there is much more because I'm using it right now, and I love what I'm doing as an accountant also. Mm-hmm. And so it was a gift. It was an extra gift that maybe the reasoning behind it was very simple, you would say, but now I'm very happy that I had that. And again, I felt like I used it fully,
So right after you got those degrees, what was your first job? What did you do to kick off your career?
The very first job I had actually was while I was still in school. I was still getting my degree, and I wrote software for a turkey production plant. They produced turkey, in Central Texas. It was a huge plant, and I wrote software for them.
How was working for them? Was it like a very luxurious job, or was it kind of difficult because they had a lot of requirements? Like, what was your experience?
I think I just really enjoyed software engineering. And so being that the job itself was enjoyable, I think the context was secondary in that moment. I worked there maybe a year, and then right away I got a job at an oil company in Texas, and a small oil and propane company. And there I remember I was 19 years old, and they asked me to be the director of IT. And and I knew they wouldn't just by discretion, they wouldn't ask my age. And so I just remember saying, oh, please, that they don't ask my age until I turn 20. At least it sounds more than 19. So I already started working as a director of IT at 19. And for this company, I worked there for several years.
When you were kind of working as a software engineer in Texas, what were your career dreams or goals? Did you have like a big idea in mind, or were you just trying to get everything started, or you just enjoyed coding, so you just wanted to keep doing that?
Well, if you think about it, at 19, I was already director of the IT department. So it was kind of like it came to me. I didn't really look for it. And I loved it. I loved, also the management part of it. I loved the creativity, how, again, I could help people. I could do a lot with the position I was in. And again, I was driven by that idea of helping, reducing the workflow, making work a little less difficult for people. So I loved it, but I really didn't go out looking for it. It just came to me, so.
Wow, that's interesting. I kind of resonate with you on the idea of you like coding so much that the context doesn't matter. If I talk to any one of my friends from college, everyone's like that. Maybe it's just a trait for engineering where you really like working with those systems, making things more efficient, automating things, so much so that it doesn't really matter what you're working on. Obviously, if it does something that you care about, it's amazing. But I think that's an interesting trait to have as an engineer, maybe even for software as well. So after kind of working as the IT director, what was your next step?
Then I moved to New York, and I got a job at Osram Corporation. It was a German company that produces light bulbs, and it was very closely related to the engineering department. It was almost part of the engineering department, the way they had it set up, and yeah.
Was there a reason why you moved to New York and got this new job?
Yeah, I would say I would have very happily stayed in Texas and worked for the oil company that I was working for. But there was something inside of me that I guess you would even say a call. I got to know in those years when I actually first started working as the director of this company, I got to know the spirituality of unity, which is animated by the Focolare Movement. And again, I wasn't looking for it, but it seemed to find me. But I really felt like, oh my gosh, this is something I want to give my life for, unity. And it just seemed like everywhere I looked that there's a need for unity. And this was a few years back. And I can see even now, even more so. Like if you look at our world today, our country, our cities, there's a need for unity. Yeah. So
could you tell us a little bit more about the Focolare movement? One of our previous guests, Clara, was also part of it. And I think it'd be good to kind of set up context for the listeners.
The Focolare movement began in 1943. It was during World War II in Trent, Italy. It was a small group of girls, 12, 13 girls, and they were all ages 14 to 23, so very young. And they all had dreams for their life. That's the age you dream and you start saying, this is what I want to be. And the war, their dreams crumbled, all of them. All of them. One wanted to get married and have a wonderful home. Another wanted to go to college. All the colleges were closed. And in that process, they said, well, there's got to be something. There's got to be something that no bomb will destroy. And in their quest, they realized it's God. Like the only thing, is God, that nothing can destroy. And very almost, you could say almost logically, but they were saying, oh, so if that's it, then we want to give our lives for God. And that was the seed, like the beginning of what became the Focolare movement. And I guess one of their first, like an episode, they would go to air raid shelters even 11 times a day because the heavy bombing, Trent was heavily bombed during World War II. And they just happened to pick up a book and bring it with them, and it was the gospel. And they opened it up, and there's that prayer is the very last prayer that Jesus prayed before he died. And they felt very attracted to it. They didn't even quite know why, but the prayer, basically, Jesus is saying, Father, he's praying to the Father. He says, Father, that all may be one. And they felt that that's what they were born for. And little by little, they said, we don't know how to do this. We don't know what unity is supposed to look like. So they asked Jesus, they said, use me. And I think that was a little bit of what I felt that day in my own small measure, use me for unity. Yeah.
Well, I think that obviously was a very big part of your life. And I think we'll see a little bit more as well, how it impacts your life throughout your career and, kind of explain how you ended up at this place in LA as well. So Focolare was a big part of the reason why you moved to New York and to work for this German company. Did you have a plan to maybe move to bigger and bigger companies, or kind of what was your thoughts about career at that moment?
Well, actually, while I was there in New York working for Osram Corporation, we're talking about light bulbs. And so 2 years in a row, I was there only 3 years. 2 of those 3 years, we actually had Oscar parties because the company, as a company, which means the whole team, we were given an Oscar, we were awarded an Oscar for a light bulb that actually helped actors. It showed a light that looked very similar to sunlight, but it wasn't hot, so they weren't sweating as much. And so we got an award 2 years in a row for our light bulbs. And so we had these huge Oscar parties at work, and, here everybody gets to take a picture with the Oscar. And,
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it was just, and you really felt this sense of it took a team to make that light bulb, So there again, I wasn't really looking for something, and that again kind of showed up in my life. I was, it was beautiful. I enjoyed it. It wasn't the most important thing in my life, though, either. Yeah, definitely wasn't. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you were thinking in New York as far as next steps. You obviously wanted a family, but what kind of led you to Europe?
One thing also, maybe a parenthesis that's important to note is with the vocation I have in the Focolare, it completely aligns with continuing with a professional career. But the career was always there, and it was very meaningful and very fulfilling, and it was definitely a part of what I felt called to. However, there was this other part of me that I really felt a passion for, which was unity, and how and the many expressions and the ways I could live that. So when I went to New York, I took a giant step. Like here I was making plans to get married, and now I said, let me try this. I don't know. I just had like a doubt inside of me, and it was like, well, what if you're really called to a life in community, where you can witness unity 24/7? And it was just a tiny little question. And, I was already making plans like here, I got my whole life planned. I'm going to have a bunch of kids. And because I grew up in a big family, and it was so rich for me that I just said, I would want that for my children. And so, I already making all these plans. And there was something inside of me that said, well, that doubt that you have inside of you, can you live with that for the rest of your life? So I left my boyfriend, and I made it like a deal with God. I know we're not supposed to make deals with God. I said, if marriage is the thing that you really want from me, I guess and even if you just listen to that question, it's like I realized God chooses us, and then we can say yes or no. It's not like we pick and choose a vocation.
Right.
And so there I said, if this is what you've chosen for me, marriage, then I know if I give this up, for you, you will, there'll be something even better down the road. And so with that, I don't know, that courage, or if you want to call it faith or what, I don't know what it was, but I said, I need to just look into this, and I had no clue what it was. And I ended up consecrating my life to God in the Focolare movement. It's a very small percentage of people in the Focolare who actually take that type of radical step. So New York was like that step of discernment. I went there with a question. So what was the answer? And after about a year, I realized it was really a call. It was a vocation. And the next step, once I realized that this is a life I want to lead, this is the yes I want to say, the next step is actually to go to a small town outside of Florence, Italy for formation. And there's formation, education. So, then I ended up moving to Florence. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So I guess your kind of struggle or pivoting point in New York was very big in your life. I think that was a very big decision. What kind of decision criteria did you have? Like, did you, it must have been difficult to have this massive life change and trying to adjust to a new country. You're already so far away from home. Like, what kind of pushed you over the edge and said, you want to commit to this?
It was actually, I guess it was my logical software engineer mind that was saying, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't logically make sense. What are you doing? And I questioned it in the reverse. And in that question, I just said, oh, this really doesn't make sense. This is not. And so I said, I'm leaving. And I really literally started packing my bags and was ready to leave. And I couldn't put my foot out that door. And that's when I said, oh, then this must really be a call. So it became very logically clear that this was my vocation, yeah.
So you go to Europe, in Italy, was it?
It was in Italy, in Florence, Italy.
What were you doing there? I understand you went through some sort of program. Could you tell us what that program was for and what was the purpose?
So it is formal formation to become a focalarina. That would be the vocation. And we would study for half a day moral theology, sociology, the doctrine of the Catholic Church. While I was there, that's what we studied. And then half a day we would work. But the real formation, you could say, was living with women from all over the world. And in your daily life, what does unity look like? Are you willing to give up? Like if the measure is ready to give my life, am I willing to give up my culture? Am I willing to give up? And when you strip yourself of everything, you realize you're free. There's just this immense freedom from letting go of everything everything you are to be there for the other person. It's not an emptiness to be empty. It's an emptiness to fill yourself with the other person. Yeah.
So it seems like it's kind of like a training ground to kind of become more of a integrated member of Focolare Movement.
That's correct. Yeah. This is formal formation for those who live in community life in the Focolare.
I can see how Focolare Movement has really integrated into your life by this point. You said you worked as well. Like, what was your job and career?
So afternoon work hours, I spent in a small art shop, and I actually practiced my art. Yeah, I honed my skills in many ways, just different things, painting, crafts, just anything to do with art. Yeah, designing designs for some of the other
So I guess
work.
you took a break from software engineering for a little bit during that period. When did that come back for you?
Then after that 3-year period, I moved to Rome and I worked at the Focolare's headquarters for 17 years as a software engineer. And I was asked to actually, from zero, put together an IT shop. And so also the server farm, the networking, and yeah.
Did you have any experience doing that in the past? Or was it kind of, you were building your skills as you go?
I had some experience. I had already worked at that point several years in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I think there was this kind of notion that if you're a software engineer, then you can kind of do everything.
That's very true.
And, and it's not true, but that was the expectation, or that was the what people thought. And so you ended up doing it and learning it. But, and again, a little bit of what you said, you also enjoy tech, and so I enjoyed it while I learned, yeah.
During those 17 years, did you ever think about going to a different job or a different kind of career?
No, I didn't. Yeah, I wasn't looking for something else.
Wow.
Yeah.
So previously you've worked at, several different companies, but this one you stuck for 17 years. It's hard to believe that you had constant growth and engagement to keep you interested. Was there anything that changed in the middle, or did you do a lot of different kind of types of software engineering?
Actually, the anchor that kept me there without even considering was that Kara Lubick, who is the founder of the Focolare Movement, actually lived in that same small town of Rokitipapa. And she was a very charismatic woman. It was a very charismatic moment, you could say. She was also very simple. She had a wonderful sense of humor, just a great person. And it was a moment, like you could say, an apex of what became the Focolare Movement, and the creation of what became the Focolare Movement happened to coincide with those 17 years. And I think that's kind of what I was drawn to. And then, I was also writing software at the international headquarters, but I wasn't really paying attention that 17 years went by, yeah.
So after, I guess, the 17 years, you came back to the States?
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
What kind of gave you the push to come back to the States, and how was that transition for you?
In the Focolare, because I'm a consecrated member and I'm not married, I'm much freer to say yes to other needs. And again, I think I was driven by needs that were presented to me. And there was a need for someone in Los Angeles We have a women's house here in Los Angeles, and I was asked would I move to Los Angeles, and I was very willing to move. And so I also felt like maybe after 17 years, all my family lived here in the States all those years, and it would be nice to be a little closer to family. So.
And when you came back, did you start working as a software engineer, or were you already an accountant by then?
After about 2 months, I got a job at USC, and I worked there in the IT department as a software engineer. And because of my background as an accountant, most of the software I wrote was financial software.
Oh, wow. I guess that kind of started your pivot into becoming an accountant. Is that right?
You could say. Yeah.
And then after USC, you're transitioning into the role that you currently have as an accountant. How did you make that jump?
I had been programming software my entire professional life, and I had programmed accounting software, a lot of accounting software, but I never was the accountant. And I had that degree, and there was a little bit of something inside of me that said, I wonder if I could do that, But I really wasn't paying that much attention to that question. And an opportunity came up also because of certain circumstances where I was working, and a job opening came up, and I remember asking the person who presented it to me, I said, do you think you can do this? And she said, well, you have a degree in accounting. Of course you can do it. And so I think it was just like a leap into the unknown. I think every time it's a leap. When I moved to Europe, it was a leap into the unknown. When I moved to New York, it was a huge leap into the unknown. So, yeah. And then here again, it was like this, I wasn't sure, but I jumped. Yeah.
I think it's super interesting that, the degree you got way earlier in your career ended up kind of helping you at this point and actually gave you the qualifications necessary to kind of move into this new career. I guess at the current state of your career, you're spending a lot of time with Economy of Communion outside of your day job and all the career you had. Like, where do you find the motivation, and like, what's the reason, of putting so much time and effort into something else other than your day job?
I guess you could say at this point in my life, I've had successful careers, not just career, and very meaningful. And by meaningful, I mean, I really found pathways to help people. Mm-hmm. That was the driving force, behind what I did. So now I feel like it's like almost a new chapter in my life. I've climbed the mountain of careers. I've done that well. I'm satisfied with what I did. But there's something inside of me that says, like, this deep need to help people in need. Like, it's a different kind of mountain. Like, for example, a close friend of mine was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she had open heart surgery recently, and it accelerated her Alzheimer's. Like, now she needs care all night long. So I go and just stay with her all night, once a week, and I'm able to keep my full-time job and do that and the EOC. But it's like, that's important. That's like, it's a need I have to be there and get kind of like messy with the messiness of people's lives, and get your hands dirty, and it's a sacrifice. And I don't know, I feel like that's the mountain I'd like to climb right now.
I think it's really important for us to kind of think about this as we're building out our careers. I think about this all the time. I'm working at a big tech company, making changes to really big code bases, and that's all cool. But I do think about my impact to this world and, how can I integrate helping others into my life other than, thinking, after I get rich, I'll donate money. I think that's too simple and we're losing out on opportunities. I guess from your experience, what are the questions that you ask yourself to kind of motivate yourself to help others, to run it in parallel with your day job?
That's a good question. I just said, I'd like to climb this mountain, but it's not some far-reaching goal. It kind of like translates into the present moment. Like, how am I responding to what's in front of me right now? How am I responding to that irritating person that just walked by? And it's not so much what happens in the day, but how did I respond to it?
For those who are kind of looking to, do more in their career, not in terms of, progressing their career, but like doing something meaningful outside of your day job, like what would be your advice and recommendation to kind of do that at the same time?
I think that's why I'm so passionate about the economy of communion. Yeah. It's not my day job, and it's about business. It's about working with businessmen, businesswomen, people who are engaged in business at every level. But the focus is the vulnerable. And I think I didn't pay attention so much early on in my careers. And then I started saying, well, what is that deepest desire in your heart? And it was there all along. Like I had identified but I want to help people in need. But it was actually something much deeper. So now I love my job as an accountant. But if I look deep inside, it's like I want to, get my hands messy with the people and where they're struggling, And when I identified that, then I would say, try to find what that thing is inside of your heart. And don't discount it just because it's in your heart. And listen to that, and then find something that aligns with that, and go for it, and jump. Yeah, jump. And it'll be dark and uncomfortable, and feel kind of weird because it's something new. But then it'll respond to that.
Do you feel like for those who are struggling with their career in the first place, it would make sense to think about this at the same time? Or would you kind of recommend getting a hold of your career first and then thinking about these things? Or maybe the other way?
I think we're all looking for meaning in our lives. And I think it would be good to consider and try to align it from the beginning. Yeah, I think that would be. I think deep down where I work too, I work with a lot of people. And you can see sometimes they're just not content with what they're doing. And so they move on. And you're just saying, well, find what you're content with. Yeah, that's important.
I think today I learned a lot. And a few things I'm picking up is, find out what you're passionate about, not in terms of career or skills or, things you could do, but how you could help this world and who you can help. I think knowing that could actually set you on a path that you've never expected and onto careers that you've never expected you would ever do. I always do this too. I remember in high school, I used to serve with doing service clubs and everything. But as I, go into my career, I do that less and less. I want to change that actually. And I'm inspired by you to kind of have something on the side where I'm doing something that's impactful to others and, fulfilling the needs of others, especially when you have like a career that's already set and you're comfortable with. I think there's enough time to help other people. So thank you so much. I've learned so much today. I'm really excited to learn more about the economy of communion and how that's going to pan out. It's such an interesting movement. So I think I'm really excited to see how that's going to work out for these many businesses.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.